My name is Natalie, and I am 23 years old. Last Thanksgiving changed my life forever. I was just passing the mashed potatoes when my grandmother Eleanor looked at me and casually asked, "Is the $2,000 I send you every month enough?" Dear, I froze. What money? Everyone turned to stare at my parents, whose faces suddenly drained of color. The silence was deafening. That moment revealed a betrayal I never saw coming. If you are watching this story, drop a comment telling me where you are from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear what happened next in this family nightmare. Before that fateful Thanksgiving dinner, I thought I understood my family dynamic. We were what I would call a typical middle-class American family, living in a suburban neighborhood in Michigan. My mother, Caroline, a middle school English teacher, and my father, Thomas, a sales representative for a furniture company, had always emphasized the importance of financial responsibility. Money does not grow on trees, my mother would remind me whenever I asked for new clothes or wanted to go to the movies with friends. They drove modest cars, clipped coupons religiously, and frequently discussed bill payments at the kitchen table. Growing up, I never questioned their financial struggles. When they could not afford to send me to summer camp or buy me the latest gaming console that my friends had, I accepted it without complaint. I understood that we had to be careful with money, and I was proud of my parents for being responsible. I learned to be content with what we had, and to appreciate small luxuries when they came. When it was time for college, my parents sat me down for a serious talk about finances. "We want to help you, Natalie, but college is expensive," my father explained with a furrowed brow. "We have saved some money, but it will not cover everything. You will need to take out student loans and work part-time." I nodded, already having anticipated this conversation. Many of my friends were in similar situations, and I was prepared to take responsibility for my education. I enrolled at the state university studying accounting. College life quickly became a juggling act between classes, homework, and multiple jobs. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore, another 15 hours waiting tables at a local diner on weekends, and occasionally picked up gigs as a note-taker for students with disabilities. Despite this grueling schedule, I still had to take out substantial student loans to cover tuition and housing. My social life suffered tremendously. While my roommate Lauren went to parties and joined clubs, I was constantly working or studying. When friends invited me to spring break trips or weekend getaways, I always declined, unable to spare either the time or money. I missed countless networking events and unpaid internship opportunities that could have advanced my career because I simply could not afford to work for free. Despite these hardships, I remained optimistic. I believed that my hard work would pay off eventually, and I took pride in my independence. I called home every Sunday, giving my parents updates on my classes and work. They always expressed how proud they were of my work ethic, occasionally sending care packages with homemade cookies and $20 bills tucked inside birthday cards. "This is all we can spare right now," they would write, which I appreciated immensely. My relationship with my grandmother Eleanor was different. She lived in Connecticut, so I did not see her often, but we spoke on the phone at least once a month. Grandma Eleanor was a retired university professor who had been widowed for nearly a decade. She had always been my biggest cheerleader, encouraging my academic pursuits and asking thoughtful questions about my studies. Unlike my parents, she rarely mentioned money during our conversations, focusing instead on my happiness and well-being. However, in the months leading up to that Thanksgiving, I noticed a shift in our phone calls. Grandma Eleanor began asking more pointed questions about my financial situation. "Are you eating properly?" she would ask. "How are you managing your expenses?" At the time, I thought she was just being a concerned grandmother, worried that I was overworking myself. I assured her that while things were tight, I was managing. I never complained about my financial struggles because I did not want her to worry. When Grandma Eleanor called to invite me to Thanksgiving at her house, I was hesitant to accept. Driving to Connecticut would cost gas money I could not spare, and I would miss 3 shifts at the diner, which meant losing significant income. But she insisted, saying the whole family would be there and it had been too long since we had all been together. "I will not take no for an answer," she declared, with the authority that had surely served her well during her teaching career. So I rearranged my work schedule, picked up extra shifts before the holiday, and prepared for the 6-hour drive to her house. Little did I know that this Thanksgiving gathering would expose a family secret that had been kept from me for years, a betrayal that would shake the very foundation of trust I had built with my parents. If only I had paid more attention to the subtle signs, perhaps I would have been better prepared for what was about to unfold at that dinner table. The drive to Connecticut was long but peaceful. I listened to podcasts about financial planning, ironically enough, and arrived at Grandma Eleanor's colonial-style home by late afternoon. The house was exactly as I remembered it from childhood visits, warm and inviting, with family photos lining the hallway walls and the scent of pumpkin pie wafting from the kitchen. My parents had arrived earlier that day and greeted me with enthusiastic hugs. My mother immediately commented on my appearance. "You look tired, honey. Are you getting enough sleep?" I brushed off her concern with a smile and a shrug. My father grabbed my overnight bag, commenting on how light it was. If they only knew I had picked this particular weekend to do laundry at home to save on laundromat costs. The rest of the family trickled in over the next few hours. My older brother Ryan and his wife Ashley arrived from Boston, where he worked as an engineer. They brought expensive wine and talked about their recent vacation to the Bahamas. I felt a pang of envy, but quickly suppressed it. Aunt Amanda, my mother's sister, came with her signature sweet potato casserole. Uncle Jack and Aunt Rebecca made a grand entrance as usual, with stories about their busy legal practice and the new lake house they were building. I noticed something odd, almost immediately. Each time Grandma Eleanor entered the room, my parents tensed slightly. My mother would quickly change the subject or suddenly find something that needed her attention in the kitchen. My father became overly jovial, loudly discussing football scores with Uncle Jack. At the time, I attributed their behavior to the usual parent-child dynamics that emerge when adult children return to their parental figure's home. The dining room looked spectacular. Grandma Eleanor had set the table with her best china and silver crystal glasses catching the light from the chandelier above. Name cards marked our places, and I found myself seated between Ashley and Grandma Eleanor, directly across from my parents. The turkey was golden brown, the side dishes abundant, and wine flowed freely. Conversation during the first part of the meal revolved around safe topics. Ryan and Ashley discussed their plans to start a family soon. Aunt Amanda talked about her garden club activities. Uncle Jack regaled us with stories from a recent high-profile case his firm had won. I mostly listened, contributing only when directly addressed with questions about my studies and graduation plans. "So Natalie," Uncle Jack asked between bites of turkey, "what are your plans after graduation? Any job prospects lined up?" Before I could answer, my father jumped in. "She has got a lot of options. Her accounting professors think very highly of her." I smiled weakly. "I have been applying to entry-level positions at several firms. The job market is pretty competitive right now, but I am hopeful." "What about that internship at Wilson and Company?" my mother asked. "Did you apply for that?" I took a sip of water before answering. "It was unpaid, Mom. I could not afford to work for free, even for the experience." A brief, uncomfortable silence followed, which Aunt Rebecca broke by asking about my student loan situation. "Those interest rates are criminal these days. How much debt are you looking at?" I hesitated, embarrassed to discuss my financial situation in front of everyone. "About $80,000, give or take." That is when it happened. Grandma Eleanor, who had been quietly eating her dinner, put down her fork with deliberation. She turned to me with a furrowed brow and asked in a clear voice that carried across the table, "Natalie, is the $2,000 I send you every month enough? If you need more for your education and living expenses, you just need to say so." The reaction around the table was immediate and dramatic. My mother choked on her wine. My father's fork clattered against his plate. Ryan suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. The rest of the family froze, eyes darting between Grandma Eleanor, my parents, and me. I stared at my grandmother in confusion. "What money, Grandma? I have never received any money from you." The silence that followed was deafening. Every eye at the table turned to my parents, whose faces had turned a sickly shade of white. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. My father cleared his throat repeatedly, a nervous habit I had known all my life. "There must be some misunderstanding," my father finally said with a forced laugh. Mom, maybe we should discuss this after dinner. Grandma Eleanor's expression hardened. I do not think there is any misunderstanding, Thomas. I have been sending $2,000 every month for the past 4 years to help with Natalie's education. The money was meant for her tuition books and living expenses, so she would not have to work so hard or take on so much debt. My heart began to pound in my chest. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to deny it, to explain that this was all some horrible mistake, but their guilty expressions told me everything I needed to know. The betrayal I felt in that moment was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Is this true? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Have you been receiving money from Grandma that was meant for me? My parents exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. The rest of the family sat in stunned silence, unwilling or unable to intervene in what was quickly becoming a family crisis. We should discuss this privately, my mother said, her voice tight with tension. I think we are well past privacy, Grandma Eleanor replied firmly. I want to know why my granddaughter is working 3 jobs and drowning in student loan debt when I have been providing more than enough money to prevent exactly that situation. And with those words, the perfect family dinner imploded, unleashing a truth that would forever change my relationship with my parents and my understanding of family loyalty. Grandma Eleanor was not backing down. With the precision of the professor she once was, she began laying out the facts. I have been sending checks every month since Natalie started college. $2,000 each month for 4 years. That is $96,000 total. Her voice was calm but firm as she continued. The arrangement was clear. The money was for Natalie's education and living expenses. My parents squirmed in their seats. My mother attempted damage control. Mom, you know how expensive college is these days. We put that money toward Natalie's education just as we agreed. Then why, I interrupted, my voice shaking. Am I $80,000 in debt? Why have I been working 3 jobs? If you had been receiving $2,000 a month for me, that would have covered most of my tuition and living expenses. The math was not adding up, and my accounting major brain was racing to reconcile these numbers. My father shifted uncomfortably. We did use some of it for your tuition, honey. But we also put some aside in investments for your future. We were thinking long term. Investments, I echoed. What investments? Where is this money now? Ryan, who had been suspiciously quiet, finally spoke up. Just tell her the truth. This has gone on long enough. All eyes turned to my brother. You knew about this, I asked, feeling another wave of betrayal wash over me. Ryan looked down at his plate. I found out last year. I saw some bank statements when I was helping Dad with his taxes. And you never thought to tell me, my voice cracked with emotion. Mom and Dad said they would handle it, he mumbled. Aunt Amanda cleared her throat. Caroline Thomas, I think you owe Natalie an explanation. My mother shot her sister a venomous look. This is family business, Amanda. Exactly, Grandma Eleanor interjected. Family business, and Natalie is family. She deserves to know what happened to the money I sent specifically for her. My father loosened his collar, visibly uncomfortable. Look, we did what we thought was best. College is just one expense. We have been supporting Natalie her entire life. Supporting me, I could not believe what I was hearing. I have been practically supporting myself since I started college. I work almost 40 hours a week on top of being a full-time student. I eat ramen for dinner most nights because I cannot afford proper groceries. I skip social events because I cannot spare $20 for a movie ticket. Tears of frustration welled in my eyes as years of exhaustion and financial stress surfaced. Do you have any idea what my life has been like? I have been killing myself trying to stay afloat, and all this time you had money that was meant for me. My mother reached across the table, attempting to take my hand, but I pulled away. Sweetie, we did not want you to take things for granted. We wanted you to learn the value of hard work. By stealing from me, I was beyond hurt now, moving rapidly into anger territory. We did not steal, my father said defensively. The checks were made out to us, not you. Grandma Eleanor's eyes flashed. Only because you insisted the arrangement be set up that way, Thomas. You said it would be easier for tax purposes and that you would make sure Natalie received the full benefit. The pieces were starting to come together, forming a picture I did not want to see. What did you do with the money? I asked quietly. The uncomfortable silence that followed spoke volumes. Thomas bought a new car 2 years ago, Aunt Rebecca said suddenly. A BMW, if I recall correctly. My father glared at her. That has nothing to do with this. And what about that kitchen renovation last year? Uncle Jack added. Must have cost a pretty penny. And the cruise to Alaska, Ryan muttered. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. While I was working multiple jobs, skipping meals, and taking on massive debt, my parents had been using my grandmother's money for luxury purchases. Is this true? I asked, though I already knew the answer. My mother burst into tears. You do not understand the pressure we have been under. We deserve something nice after all these years of sacrifice. Sacrifice? I was incredulous. What sacrifice? You have been living comfortably while I have been struggling. And then another terrible thought occurred to me. What about my scholarship money? During my sophomore year, I had received a merit scholarship for $5,000. My parents had insisted on handling the paperwork, saying they would apply it directly to my tuition. The guilty look they exchanged told me everything I needed to know. That too, I whispered, devastated. We were going to pay you back, my father insisted, once we were in a better financial position. When would that be? After I worked myself into the ground, after I spent decades paying off loans for money I never needed to borrow in the first place. Grandma Eleanor placed a gentle hand on my arm. There is more, Natalie. When I spoke with your financial aid office last week, trying to understand why you still had so much debt, they mentioned additional loans taken out in your name. I felt the blood drain from my face. What additional loans? My parents exchanged another guilty look. We needed to consolidate some of our own debt, my mother admitted quietly. The interest rates on student loans are better than personal loans. The implication was staggering. You took out additional loans in my name, without my knowledge or consent. My voice had risen to a near shout. That is identity theft, that is fraud. We are your parents, my father countered defensively. We have always made financial decisions for you. I am 23 years old, an adult. You had no right. The dinner table had become a courtroom with my parents standing trial before the family jury. Aunt Amanda and Uncle Jack looked horrified. Ashley was squeezing Ryan's arm so tightly her knuckles were white. Grandma Eleanor sat straight-backed and stern like a judge presiding over the proceedings. How much? I demanded. How much additional debt did you saddle me with? My father mumbled something inaudible. Speak up, Grandma Eleanor commanded. Another 30,000, he admitted. The room spun around me. Not only had my parents taken $96,000 that was meant to help me, but they had also burdened me with an additional 30,000 in fraudulent loans. No wonder they had insisted on having all my financial aid documents sent to their address. No wonder they had always been vague about exactly how much I owed. So let me get this straight, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Grandma has been sending you $2,000 a month for me. You also took my $5,000 scholarship. And on top of that, you took out $30,000 in loans under my name. That is $131,000 total. And I am still $80,000 in debt and working 3 jobs to survive. The silence that followed confirmed it all. I pushed back from the table, unable to remain seated any longer. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at the 2 people I had trusted most in the world. How could you do this to me, your own daughter? We are still your parents, my mother said tearfully. Everything we have done has been for this family. No, I said, my voice breaking. Everything you have done has been for yourselves, at my expense. I turned and walked out of the dining room, leaving behind the untouched pumpkin pie and a family fractured by secrets and betrayal. I found myself on Grandma Eleanor's back porch, gulping in the cold November air. My mind was racing, trying to process the magnitude of what I had just learned. The wooden porch swing creaked as I sat down, wrapping my arms around myself for warmth and comfort. The sliding glass door opened behind me. I expected it to be my grandmother, but instead it was Ashley, my brother's wife. She draped a warm blanket over my shoulders before sitting beside me. I am so sorry, Natalie, she said quietly. I had no idea this was happening. I nodded, unable to speak through the lump in my throat. Ryan only told me parts of it, she continued. I pushed him to tell you, but he was caught between loyalty to his parents and loyalty to you. Seems like I lost that contest, I said bitterly. The door slid open again, and this time it was Grandma Eleanor followed by Aunt Rebecca. Their expressions were a mixture of concern and controlled anger. The others are still inside, Grandma Eleanor explained, lowering herself into a patio chair across from me. I thought we should talk privately before going back in there. Aunt Rebecca, a formidable presence in her tailored pantsuit, stood with her arms crossed. As an attorney, I feel obligated to point out that what your parents did constitutes fraud and identity theft. Taking out loans in your name without your consent is a criminal offense. The reality of the situation hit me anew. My parents were not just morally wrong, they had broken the law. I never wanted it to come to this, Grandma, Eleanor said, her voice heavy with disappointment. When your grandfather died, I made a promise to myself that I would use our savings to help our grandchildren. Your cousin Michael received the same monthly stipend for his medical school. The difference is that his parents actually gave him the money. Tears welled in my eyes again. All these years I thought I was doing the right thing, working hard, being responsible, not asking for handouts. And all along I should have had enough money to focus on my education without killing myself with extra jobs. You should not have had any student loans at all, Grandma Eleanor confirmed. The money I sent would have covered your tuition and reasonable living expenses. A terrible thought occurred to me. The Parent Plus loans they said they took out for me, were those even real? Aunt Rebecca shook her head. I suspect not. They probably used that as an excuse to explain their financial strain while pocketing your grandmother's money. The back door opened again and my brother Ryan stepped out. His face was ashen and he could barely meet my eyes. They are trying to justify it, he said, his voice low. Dad is saying they deserved compensation for raising us, that the money was repayment for everything they have done. That is not how parenting works, Aunt Rebecca snapped. You do not get rewarded for doing what you are supposed to do. Ryan sat on the steps, head in his hands. I should have told you, Nat. I am sorry. When I found out last year, they swore they would make it right. They said they were investing the money for your future. What investments? I asked. Where is all this money now? Ryan shook his head. There are no investments. They spent it. The new car, the kitchen, remodel, vacations, designer clothes for Mom. They have been living beyond their means for years, using your money to fund their lifestyle. Another wave of betrayal washed over me. I had been wearing secondhand clothes and skipping meals while my mother bought designer outfits with money meant for me. The sliding door opened once more and my parents stepped onto the porch. My mother's makeup was streaked with tears, but my father still maintained his defensive posture. Natalie, we need to talk, he began. Now you want to talk. I stood up, the blanket falling from my shoulders, after 4 years of lies. We are your parents, my mother pleaded. We love you. Everything we did because we thought it was best. Best for whom? I demanded. For me. How was deceiving me and stealing from me best for me? We did not steal, my father insisted. That money was sent to us. It was sent to you for Natalie, Grandma Eleanor corrected sharply, with very clear instructions about its purpose. We raised her, my father countered. We clothed her, fed her, put a roof over her head for 18 years. Does that count for nothing? That is what parents are supposed to do, I shouted, finally losing my composure entirely. You do not get a medal for basic parenting. You certainly do not get to steal money meant for my education and future. We were going to pay you back, my mother said weakly. With what money? I challenged. You cannot even manage your own finances responsibly. You are drowning in credit card debt, taking out fraudulent loans in my name. How exactly were you planning to pay back over $100,000? My father's face reddened. Now you listen here, young lady. You have no idea the sacrifices we have made for this family. Sacrifices, Grandma Eleanor interrupted. Like sacrificing your daughter's financial stability and future, like sacrificing her trust. The confrontation was interrupted by Uncle Jack clearing his throat from the doorway. I think we all need to calm down and discuss this rationally. There is nothing rational about this situation, I said, wiping angry tears from my face. They stole from me. They lied to me for years. They watched me struggle, work multiple jobs, skip meals, miss opportunities, all while they were sitting on money that was meant for me. We are still your parents, my mother repeated, as if that excused everything. Parents are supposed to protect their children, not exploit them, I replied, my voice breaking. I do not even know who you are anymore. The weight of everything suddenly became too much. 4 years of unnecessary struggle, 4 years of missed opportunities, 4 years of trust, destroyed in a single evening. I sank back onto the porch swing, overwhelmed by grief and betrayal. Grandma Eleanor moved to sit beside me, her arm around my shoulders. This is not your fault, Natalie. None of this is your fault. Through my tears, I looked up at my parents, these strangers I thought I knew. I want every penny back. I want the loans in my name paid off. I want my life back. We do not have that kind of money, my father admitted. Then you better figure it out, Aunt Rebecca said coldly. Because the alternative is that Natalie reports this fraud to the authorities and you both face criminal charges. The reality of their situation finally seemed to dawn on my parents. The facade of righteous indignation crumbled, revealing the fear beneath. We never meant to hurt you, my mother whispered. But they had hurt me in ways that went far beyond money. They had betrayed my trust, watched me struggle unnecessarily, and prioritized their comfort over my well-being. In that moment, standing on my grandmother's porch under the cold November stars, I realized that my relationship with my parents would never be the same again. That night I stayed in Grandma Eleanor's guest bedroom rather than the hotel where my parents were staying. Sleep eluded me as I stared at the ceiling, replaying the evening's revelations over and over in my mind. By morning, my shock had crystallized into resolve. I would not let this betrayal define me, but I would also not pretend it had not happened. Grandma Eleanor was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs, brewing coffee and making French toast as if it were any normal day after Thanksgiving. She smiled warmly when she saw me. Did you sleep at all? She asked, sliding a mug of coffee across the counter to me. Not really, I admitted, taking a grateful sip. I kept thinking about all the things I could have done differently these past 4 years if I had actually received that money. Grandma Eleanor sat across from me, her own coffee mug cradled between her hands. I should have checked up on the arrangement, she said, regret evident in her voice. I trusted your parents to honor our agreement. It is not your fault, I assured her. You were trying to help. And I still want to, she said firmly, which is why I would like to speak with you about setting up a new arrangement, one that cuts out the middlemen. Over breakfast, Grandma Eleanor shared her own story, one I had never heard before. In her youth, her parents had controlled her finances completely, even after she was working as a professor. They had monitored her spending, questioned her purchases, and generally treated her like a child well into her 30s. It was your grandfather who helped me break free, she explained. He showed me that financial independence is a crucial part of personal independence. I vowed never to control my children or grandchildren that way, but I also wanted to provide genuine support. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I am setting up a new account in your name only. I will deposit the remaining money I had set aside for your education plus additional funds to compensate for what was taken. Grandma, you do not have to do that, I protested. I want to, she insisted. But this time the money goes directly to you. You decide how to use it, whether for paying off loans, finishing your education, or starting your career. My phone had been buzzing all morning with texts and calls from my parents, which I had been ignoring. Around noon it rang with Ryan's number. They want to meet with you, he said without preamble, to explain and apologize. I am not ready to talk to them, I replied. I understand, Ryan said. For what it is worth, I told them they were wrong. I should have done that a long time ago. Later that afternoon, Aunt Rebecca stopped by with documents in hand. I have drafted a repayment agreement, she explained, spreading papers on the dining room table. It acknowledges the money that was misappropriated and sets up a schedule for repayment. Do you think they will sign it? I asked. They will if they want to avoid legal consequences, she replied matter-of-factly. Identity theft and fraud carry serious penalties. This agreement gives them a way to make things right without involving the courts. By evening, my parents had arrived at Grandma Eleanor's house looking subdued and defeated. The initial meeting was tense and tearful, with my mother repeatedly trying to hug me, while my father fluctuated between defensiveness and grudging remorse. We never meant for things to go this far, my mother said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. It started with just borrowing a little from the first few checks, and then it snowballed. Borrowing without telling me is still stealing, I pointed out. We know that now, my father said, though his tone suggested he still did not fully accept responsibility. But you have to understand our perspective. We have supported you your entire life. And that was your choice when you decided to have children, I countered. It does not entitle you to steal money specifically intended for my education. Aunt Rebecca stepped in, directing everyone's attention to the repayment agreement. This document acknowledges that Thomas and Caroline received $96,000 from Eleanor, intended for Natalie's education and living expenses. It also acknowledges the $5,000 scholarship and the $30,000 in unauthorized loans taken out in Natalie's name. My parents balked at first, especially when they saw the repayment terms. "This is impossible," my father protested. "We cannot afford these payments." "You managed to afford a new BMW and a luxury cruise," Aunt Rebecca pointed out coolly. "Perhaps some lifestyle adjustments are in order." After hours of negotiation, a modified agreement was reached. My parents would sell the BMW and use their home equity to pay off the fraudulent loans immediately. The remaining debt would be repaid in monthly installments over 5 years. "And one more thing," I added. "I want all my financial documents transferred to my name only. No more access to my accounts, my credit, or my financial aid information." The hurt look on my mother's face almost made me waver, but I stood firm. Trust once broken could not be easily restored. As they prepared to leave, my mother tried once more to embrace me. This time I allowed a brief, stiff hug. "We do love you, Natalie," she whispered. "We just lost our way." "I know," I replied, though I was not entirely sure I believed it anymore. Love in my experience did not involve the kind of betrayal I had endured. That night I called my closest friends Lauren and Jessica and poured out the whole story. Their outrage and support bolstered my resolve to stand my ground. "You can stay with me when we get back to campus," Lauren offered immediately. "You should not have to see them until you are ready." "And I know someone in the financial aid office," Jessica added. "She can help make sure all your accounts are properly transferred to your control." For the first time since the disastrous dinner, I felt a glimmer of hope. I had lost trust in my parents, but I had gained clarity about my situation and my future. I was surrounded by people who genuinely supported me, and I was taking control of my financial independence. As the Thanksgiving weekend drew to a close, I made one of the hardest decisions of my life. I would not be going home for Christmas as planned. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too profound. Instead, I accepted Grandma Eleanor's invitation to spend the holiday with her. "It is going to take time," she said as she hugged me goodbye. "Healing does not happen overnight." I nodded, knowing she was right. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in years I felt like I was standing on solid ground, ready to face whatever came next. Back at university, I threw myself into action. My first stop was the financial aid office, where I met with a counselor to review my entire financial history. With Jessica's friend helping navigate the bureaucracy, I was able to get a complete picture of my student loans, including the ones fraudulently taken out in my name. These additional loans were processed with electronic signatures, the counselor explained, pointing to documents on her computer screen. "Did you authorize these?" "No," I said firmly. "I never saw these documents before today." The process of disputing the fraudulent loans was complicated, requiring affidavits and potentially a police report against my own parents. For the moment, I decided to hold off on formal legal action, giving my parents the chance to fulfill their promise to pay off these loans immediately. Next, I met with an advisor at the campus bank to open entirely new accounts with enhanced security measures. I changed all my passwords, set up two-factor authentication, and placed a freeze on my credit to prevent any new accounts from being opened in my name. You are taking all the right steps, the bank advisor assured me. Identity theft is unfortunately common even among family members. I did not tell her that the identity thieves were my own parents. The shame of that admission was still too raw. My living situation also changed dramatically. Lauren made good on her offer, and I moved into her apartment, taking over the bedroom of a roommate who was studying abroad for the semester. The apartment was closer to campus, and my job's cutting down my commute time significantly. With Grandma Eleanor's financial support now coming directly to me, I was able to reduce my work hours, dropping the diner job entirely and cutting back at the bookstore. For the first time in 4 years, I had time to actually participate in campus life. I joined the accounting club, attended networking events, and even had occasional movie nights with friends, without constantly calculating the cost against my meager budget. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, I received a certified letter from my parents. Inside was proof that they had sold the BMW and used the proceeds along with a home equity loan to pay off the $30,000 in fraudulent student loans. They had also enclosed the first installment of the repayment plan we had agreed upon. Their accompanying letter was filled with apologies and explanations, reiterating that they had never meant to hurt me and had simply gotten caught up in their own financial problems. Reading between the lines, I could see they still did not fully grasp the magnitude of their betrayal. To them, this was primarily a financial issue that could be resolved with money. They did not understand that they had broken something far more valuable than any dollar amount could represent: my trust. As December progressed, Ryan called with another revelation. They did the same thing to me, he admitted. Not with Grandma's money, but with my college fund. Dad used most of it to invest in a friend's business venture that failed. Why did you never tell me? I asked. They bought my silence, he said, his voice heavy with shame. Helped with the down payment on our house, paid for our wedding. I convinced myself it was all water under the bridge. This new information strengthened my resolve. This was not a one-time mistake, but a pattern of financial exploitation by my parents. Ryan and I began to compare notes, uncovering a history of financial manipulation that stretched back years. In January, with the new semester starting, I received an unexpected email from a prestigious accounting firm offering spring internship interviews. The opportunity was exactly what I had been hoping for, but had always seemed out of reach due to my work schedule. Now, with my reduced hours and Grandma Eleanor's support, I could actually accept if offered the position. The interview went well, and I was offered the internship, which came with a stipend that, while modest, meant I could further reduce my work hours at the bookstore. For the first time, my career path felt open and promising rather than a constant struggle. Meanwhile, the situation with my parents continued to evolve. In February, they requested a family meeting, which I reluctantly agreed to attend at Aunt Rebecca's house, neutral territory, with a buffer present. They arrived with folders of financial documents, eager to show they were making progress on the repayment plan, but I was not interested in merely financial restitution. I need you to understand that this is not just about the money, I explained, maintaining my composure despite the emotional tension in the room. This is about the fact that you watched me struggle unnecessarily for years. You saw me working multiple jobs, skipping meals, missing opportunities, and you said nothing. You actively perpetuated my financial hardship while benefiting from money that was meant to ease that very hardship. My mother burst into tears. We never meant it to go on so long. We kept thinking we would find a way to fix it. By continuing to lie, I challenged. By taking out fraudulent loans in my name. My father, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. We were wrong, he admitted, perhaps for the first time, without qualifications or excuses. Completely wrong. We betrayed your trust in the worst possible way. This simple acknowledgement, without deflection or justification, was the first step towards something that might eventually resemble reconciliation. It was not forgiveness, not yet, but it was a crack in the wall of hurt and anger I had built. I presented them with my terms for moving forward. First, complete financial separation with all documentation showing the loans had been paid off and the repayment plan was in progress. Second, family therapy if we were to have any relationship going forward. Third, a commitment to transparency about all financial matters involving me past and present. These are non-negotiable, I stated firmly. If you want me in your lives, these are my conditions. To my surprise, they agreed without argument. Perhaps they finally understood the gravity of what they had done, or perhaps they simply realized they had no leverage left. Either way, they signed the documents Aunt Rebecca had prepared acknowledging their actions and committing to my terms. As spring arrived, bringing with it my final semester of college, I found myself in a completely different position than I had been in just months earlier. The internship had led to a job offer for after graduation. My student loan debt, while still substantial, was now manageable with the repayment plan and Grandma Eleanor's help. Most importantly, I had reclaimed control over my life and my future. The family dynamics remained complicated. Ryan and I had grown closer through our shared experience of financial exploitation. My relationship with my parents was cautious and limited, conducted primarily through the family therapy sessions we had begun attending. Grandma Eleanor had become not just a source of financial support but a mentor and confidant. As graduation approached, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. From the shock of betrayal at Thanksgiving dinner to the careful reconstruction of my life on my own terms, I had traversed an emotional landscape I never could have imagined. The painful truth had set me free in ways I was only beginning to understand. 1 year after that fateful Thanksgiving dinner, I found myself once again at Grandma Eleanor's house, helping her prepare for another holiday meal. So much had changed in 12 months. I had graduated with honors, started my career at the accounting firm, and moved into my own apartment, small but entirely mine. For the first time in my adult life, I was financially stable with a growing savings account and a clear plan for my future. The dining room table was set beautifully, but with fewer place settings than the previous year. My parents would not be joining us their absence, a testament to the ongoing process of healing that was neither quick nor easy. We had made progress in our family therapy sessions, but trust was slowly rebuilt, not instantly restored. "Are you nervous about seeing Ryan and Ashley?" Grandma Eleanor asked as she arranged flowers in the centerpiece. "A little," I admitted. "It is still complicated." My relationship with my brother had evolved over the year. While we had bonded over our shared experience of financial exploitation by our parents, Ryan still carried guilt for his silence. He had made amends in his own way, becoming an ally in ensuring our parents adhered to the repayment plan and supporting my independence. "Family is always complicated," Grandma Eleanor said wisely, "but the difference now is that you are engaging with that complexity from a position of strength and truth, not vulnerability and deception." Her words resonated deeply. The past year had been a journey of reclaiming my power, establishing healthy boundaries, and learning to trust my own judgment. The financial aspect, while significant, was ultimately secondary to these more profound changes. With Grandma Eleanor's help and the structured repayment plan, I had reduced my student loan debt significantly. The fraudulent loans had been paid off entirely, and I was on track to be debt-free within 5 years rather than the 20 I had originally faced. More importantly, I had learned invaluable lessons about financial independence and literacy that would serve me throughout my life. My career was flourishing. The internship had converted to a full-time position, and my work ethic, honed through years of juggling multiple responsibilities, had made me stand out among my peers. I was already being considered for early advancement, something that would have seemed impossible during my struggling student days. But the most significant changes were internal. I had learned to set and maintain boundaries, to recognize when trust was earned versus when it was exploited, and to value my own well-being as non-negotiable. These lessons, painful as they were to acquire, had transformed me. The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of our first guests. Ryan and Ashley entered with cautious smiles and a pumpkin pie. The initial moments were awkward, but as we settled into the familiar routines of holiday preparation, the tension eased. "How are Mom and Dad doing?" I asked Ryan as we chopped vegetables for the salad. "They are still working through things," he replied carefully. "The financial counseling has been good for them. They have had to make a lot of adjustments, but I think it is for the best in the long run." I nodded, appreciating his diplomacy. Our parents had been forced to downsize, selling their house to meet their financial obligations. The process had been humbling for them, a concrete consequence of their actions that no amount of excuses could mitigate. "And how are you doing?" Ryan asked, his expression serious. "Really doing?" I considered the question, wanting to give an honest answer. "I am healing," I said finally. "Some days are harder than others. I still have moments of anger when I think about all the unnecessary struggles I went through. But mostly I am focused on building my life on my terms." Ryan squeezed my shoulder briefly. "I am proud of you, Nat. Not many people would have handled this with the grace and strength you have shown." His words warmed me, a small healing in themselves. As more guests arrived, Uncle Jack and Aunt Rebecca, followed by Aunt Amanda, the house filled with the comforting sounds of family. There was laughter, genuine this time, not hiding secrets or tension. There were heartfelt conversations about real issues, not superficial exchanges designed to maintain facades. When we finally gathered around the table, Grandma Eleanor raised her glass in a toast. "To truth," she said simply. "And to the courage it takes to face it." We all drank to that, the significance not lost on anyone present. Later, as we enjoyed pumpkin pie and coffee in the living room, Aunt Rebecca sat beside me on the sofa. "You know, watching you this past year has been inspiring," she said. "You took a devastating betrayal and transformed it into an opportunity for growth and self-determination." "I had help," I acknowledged, glancing at Grandma Eleanor, who was engaged in animated conversation with Aunt Amanda across the room. "Yes, but you did the hard work," Aunt Rebecca insisted. "You could have collapsed under the weight of it all or let bitterness consume you. Instead, you channeled your hurt into positive action." Her words made me reflect on the journey of the past year. The truth was, I had learned lessons that went far beyond financial literacy or independence. I had learned about the complex nature of love and how it could be both genuine and deeply flawed. I had learned that sometimes the people who should protect you the most can hurt you the deepest, not out of malice, but out of their own unresolved issues and weaknesses. Most importantly, I had learned that trust must be earned and maintained, not automatically granted based on titles or relationships. This lesson had extended beyond my family to all areas of my life, helping me build healthier friendships and professional relationships. The betrayal I had experienced was not something I would ever be grateful for, but I could acknowledge that navigating its aftermath had forced me to develop strength and resilience I might otherwise never have discovered within myself. As the evening wound down and guests prepared to leave, Grandma Eleanor pulled me aside for a private moment. "I want you to know how proud I am of you," she said, holding both my hands in hers. "Not just for what you have accomplished this year, but for the person you have become through this adversity." Tears welled in my eyes. "I could not have done it without you." "You would have found your way," she said confidently. "Maybe not as quickly or easily, but you have always had the strength within you. Sometimes it takes a crisis to reveal what we are truly capable of." As I helped clean up after everyone had left, I found myself reflecting on the contrast between this Thanksgiving and the last. The truth that had been revealed at that dinner table had shattered my world, but from those fragments I had constructed something new and stronger. Family secrets have a way of poisoning relationships from within, creating foundations built on shifting sand. Only through radical honesty and accountability can those foundations be rebuilt on solid ground. It is a painful process requiring courage and perseverance, but the alternative, living in the comfortable shadows of deception, ultimately causes more damage. I had learned that true love, whether in families or elsewhere, must be rooted in respect, honesty, and mutual support. Anything less is not love, but control or exploitation wearing love's disguise. As I moved forward into my future, I carried these lessons with me, not as burdens but as hard-won wisdom that would guide my choices and relationships. The betrayal would always be part of my story, but it would not define me or limit what I could become. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that forced you to reevaluate everything you thought you knew? How did you rebuild trust afterward? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, Please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they too can overcome betrayal and build a stronger future. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember that sometimes our greatest strength emerges from our most painful experiences.